Part 338. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 3380. Yang Zizi had booked the cabin in advance. It was not the first time for Bai Jingxin to take a boat, especially the boat to Longzhou. In the past few years, when the water transportation was dredged in various places, she often followed her parents out. So she was very familiar with the cabin, and once she got on the boat, she took the sign to find it, and dragged Bai Ruyu away. Yang Zizi saw that she was leaving happily, so he turned around and said to the three apprentices who were dumbfounded, "Let's go, I'll take you to the cabin." Li Hong quickly followed. "Brother Yang, have you paid the money in advance?" Yang Zizi said with a smile, "Didn't I ask you guys for a list of the accompanying list and luggage to bring? I made it directly according to the list. We'll send the money to the apprentice soon." Yang Zizi shook his head slightly. "Forget about this part, let's get off the ship in Longzhou, let's do our part." "How can we take advantage of senior brother?" Yang Zizi said, "This is my selfishness. As you all know, I was injured 2 years ago, although I usually can't see it, but my body is much weaker than before, and I don't dare to be too tired, so I chose to travel by water." He said apologetically, "We will be traveling together for a long time, so I hope that the students will bear with me. I am weak and can't hurry. The time spent on the road may be more than expected." Facing Yang Zizi's face, it is difficult for most people to refuse, especially when the other party is still apologetic. The three junior brothers hurriedly said, "Student brother is too polite, this is what it should be, the doctor has already told us before going out." "Well, originally, the senior didn't have to be with us, or we traveled together because he had to take us, and it's because we bothered the senior. Let's help each other," Yang Zizi said with a smile. "This is a study tour. Although it is important to learn Chinese characters, we must not relax. So along the way, even if we don't go to the official school to exchange and study, we must study to avoid entering the school. The local officials have lost the face of Quazijian." The three of them responded in unison, "Yes, their husbands, as well as the doctor who saw him off in the imperial prison, emphasized this before they came out. I'm a few years older than you, and I've read a few more years, so you can ask me if you have any questions when you're studying. That's one of the reasons why Swilly let me lead the team." The three looked grateful. "Thank you, senior brother." Yang Zizi nodded, and then talked about the journey. "The school gave us the scope, I looked at the map, it is best to walk back in a circle, this way there are less repetitions, less time spent, and people who can communicate. There are also many official schools. Are we going to Suizhu first?" "Because going from the north, it is the closest to Suizhu." Yang Zizi shook his head. "No, let's go to Luzhu first, then go east to Yizhou, Fuzhou, and Qianzhou, and then take another road to study and return to Hezhu. Isn't there a place for overlap?" "There are only 2 counties, Yang Zizi said, "each prefecture includes quite a few counties, we can't just go to the school to exchange, the county school is also very important, I heard that some county schools have more teachers than the government schools. To be powerful, there are officials who retired from the DPRK and those who return to their hometowns. Most of them live in their hometowns and occasionally go to the county school to give lectures, so." The three of them were refreshed and quickly said, "Let's listen to the senior." Yang Zizi nodded and said apologetically, "Originally, the distance of the study tour should have been discussed with you and then decided, but yesterday I sent someone to look for you, but I didn't find anyone in the school or your home, so I decided to make it temporarily. After this journey, if you have good suggestions, or if you have a special government school you want to go to, you can tell me that we will change it on the way. After all, this road is a long way to go, and each place will stay for a long time, and temporary changes will be made. There is time." The three of them went to drink goodbye wine with their classmates yesterday. Those classmates had skipped class. They didn't dare to say anything to Yang Zizi, so they smiled and said, "We don't have any opinions, we all listen to Brother Yang. Then the matter is settled like this, let's go, I will take you to the cabin for resettlement. This is a boat that specializes in soliciting passengers, so the VIP cabins on the second floor are very large, comparable to the rooms of general inns. There was a bed, a table, and a wooden couch for the next person to sleep on. Yang Zizi generously reserved a room for each of them. The guards live on the first floor. In addition to the two guards, Bai Jingxing only brought one girl, called Qian Xiaoyang, who said it was the girl, but in fact she was already in charge of her aunt's wages, and the girls in the house also called her Aunt Xiaoyang. Although she is not young, she has an innocent temperament and looks very small. However, she is not small. She was selected by Zhou Man as a helper in the Bihai medical office when he was in Qingzhou. She learned some medical theory and martial arts at the medical office, and Bai Shan took her with him when he returned from Qingzhou. However, the contract she signed with the Bai family has always been a living contract, and she was also bold and signed it directly for 20 years. Bai Shan asked her and Zibing to follow Zhou Man, because not only did she know some medical principles, she could handle medicinal materials, and she also learned Kung Fu well, especially hard gong. She was strong and learned hard gong very well. When Bai Jingxing was out on this trip, Zhou Man specially gave her to Bai Jingxing when he chose the girl to accompany him. He also saw that she was good at Kung Fu and medical theory, so that he could not only protect Bai Jingxing, but also help Bai Jingxing when he was practicing medicine. Qian Xiaoyang is a self-comb, and has never been married. She is not very good at serving people, but she is very skilled at the basics. She put down the luggage, opened the box and took out Bai Jingxing's quilt to make the bed, put aside the quilt that was brought on board, and then started to pack the luggage in the box and put out the tea set. Bai Jingxing wandered around the room. After pondering for a while, he locked a switch, pushed the window open, and the room was instantly brightened a lot. Qian Xiaoyang looked up and couldn't help but wonder, there is such a big window. Bai Jingxing himself was also very pleasantly surprised, the location of this room is excellent. From here, you can see the river completely, and it also avoids the two sides with the most people on the deck. It's good. There is also a wooden couch by the window, which allows people to lean on it and look out at the scenery. Bai Jingxing couldn't help rolling on the couch for half a circle, kicked his legs happily and said, "I'm so happy, I don't think I'll be bored anymore." She looked in the room, pointed to the screen that was received, and said, "Move that screen here, unfold it, just enough to block the bed, so that there is an inner and outer room. Big Brother Yang, Ruyu, and the others can also come and play with me." Qian Xiaoyang blinked and said, I just went to deliver tea to Master Tang, his room doesn't seem to be this big." Bai Jingxing smiled and said, "He's not as lucky as me, this time it's finally my turn." Qian Xiaoyang thought about it too, and while packing his luggage, he said, "Miss has always been blessed. Good night." Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 3381. Bai Ruyu also felt that her room was not as good as Bai Jingxing's, not only because of its size, but also because of its location. This room of Bai Jingxing can be said to have the best position on the whole ship, and the viewing position is excellent. Bai Ruyu was envious as she wandered over, "Why didn't I get this room? Bai Jingxing, I'm lucky." Bai Ruyu's servant said in doubt, "Isn't the brand of the room distributed by young Master Yang? Even if you are lucky, it is also young Master Yang's luck, right?" Bai Jingxing, "I am lucky if it is assigned to me." Yang Zizi stood at the door, knocked on the door, and said to the four who turned back, "Now the passengers have just boarded the ship, and the deck is in chaos. You should rest in the house first, and wait for the ship to go out for a while before going out." The two agreed. Bai Jingxing simply invited Yang Zizi, "Brother Yang, do you want to stay for a cup of tea?" Yang Zizi entered the door and nodded with a smile. Okay. The waterway to the south has been opened, there are many more boats on the river than in previous years, and the banks are also lively, even some small piers are crowded with people. Bored. But she could only watch for 3 days, because they arrived in Longzhou on the afternoon of the 4th day. The group disembarked and continued their journey after staying in Longzhou for a day. Yang Zizi and the others said, Mianzhou's new rice has always been famous in Dajin. The annual permu production is second only to Jingzhou, but the taste is very good. The production has been increasing, do you want to go and see the situation? Li Han and the others did not have any objections, and said eagerly to Bai Ruyu, Brother Bai, your ancestral home is in Mianzhou, right? Are you familiar with Mianzhou? Bai Ruyu said, I've been back a few times. Although I'm not familiar with it, Mianzhou is very interesting. Bai Jingxing simply invited them, both of us are in Mianzhou, do you want to visit my house? The three of Li Han were very moved, and said embarrassedly, this is not good, right? What's wrong, we can just go home and take a look, Bai Jingxing said, there is a village over there, and the mountain is full of fruit trees, all kinds of fruit trees. Wang Yi, at this moment, the fruit trees have neither fruit to eat nor flowers to enjoy. What can I do in Zhuangzi? Bai Jingxing, there are still some, although it will be a little small and a bit astringent, but you can eat it if you want. Wang Yi, thank you for not being sensitive. That's settled, we will stay in Mianzhou for 2 days, Yang Zizi said, you can also go to the prefectural school in Mianzhou and the county school in Lujian County to listen to lectures. Although Mianzhou is not within the scope of the National Children's Supervision Program, it is still possible for them to go to study. Li Han and the others responded, and also wanted to hear about the official schools in Mianzhou and Lujian County. Since the Imperial College began to allow women to enter school, women's schools in various places have gradually flourished. At first, the meaning of the official school in various regions was to let women among the local officials who were interested in entering the official school enter the official school. Later, the folk followed the trend and the women's school became popular, and the official school also began to allow women to enter the school. But there are still not many women studying in official schools. There are only 5 county schools in Lujian County. And some county schools don't even have a single female student. The further you go to the southwest, the more such cases become. Sometimes there are not many female students even in the prefectural school. Therefore, there was a female student among the disciples who came to study abroad in the Quazijian, which is a very sensational thing in the official school. Especially for those official schools with few female students or no students at all, Bai Jingxing was watched like a rare thing. This made her very uncomfortable and unhappy. She was often noticed when she was in the capital, but that kind of attention was either based on her talent, or because of her identity. There were admiration, envy, jealousy, and disgust in her eyes. She was accustomed to these glances, but the gazes that were watching her in these places were like looking at rare things, just like they were watching a monkey show on the street. So after Bai Jingxing encountered such an official school, she simply stayed for a while longer. Not only did she openly appear in the official school to listen to the class with the male students, but she also discussed knowledge with her husband in the class. If she can't do it, she will find Yang Zizi. Yang Zizi also let her go, and the two of them killed the invincible hands of local officials. Yang Zizi reminded her, if you want to gain prestige, it's not enough to fight, you have to be kind. So Bai Jingxing wrote a letter to her mother and dragged Bai Ruyu together. The two of them tried their best to urge their mothers to donate books to each official school, in the name of donating to the female students of the official school. There are 2 sources for the books of the official schools. One is that the imperial bookstores printed them and sent them to the official schools, the other was that the official schools purchased and collected them by themselves. But there are so many prefectures and counties in the world, and not all the official schools can get the books printed by the bookstore. Many of them are books that have been eliminated by the higher level official schools, and some even have no books that have been eliminated. The books in their library may not fit on 2 bookshelves, and many of them are standard books, and the students themselves have them, and it is difficult to find even a note. Yang Zizi helped her sort out a book list, which she sent back to her mother. Zhou Man got the book list and handed it directly to Bai Shan. Your daughter asked you to donate books. Bai Shan stretched out his hand to take it, glanced at it and said, it's quite complete. In addition to the necessary collections of classics and history, there are also military books, agricultural books, and some miscellaneous stories, all of which are engraved plates in Bai Er's bookstore. When did she pay attention to these? Zhou Man, Zizi helped to sort it out. I heard the eldest sister say that he helped her in her discussions with the gentleman in the official school, so there is no shame in that. Bai Shan looked at the book list in his hand and said thoughtfully, he's really attentive. So how much do we donate? Zhou Man leaned over and asked, even if a book is only at cost, it's not cheap. How much do you think we should donate? Bai Shan closed the book list and said, all the books on the book list will be sent to all the official schools within the scope of the Imperial Academy. Zhou Man opened his mouth wide and gave a thumbs up, you are generous. Bai Shan grabbed her thumb and said with a smile, it's just the earnings of the paper mill this year. When you send the book, put it on the eldest sister's head and tell her that even if you donate books, you and I should not be mentioned. The name, since she proposed it, only her name will be used. However, now that Bai Shan and Zhou Man are both high and powerful, it's really not easy to get involved with this kind of thing, it's better to put it all on the child's head. Zhou Man nodded, I'll tell you, I'll go to Mingda tomorrow when I come back from the office and talk about it. No need, Bai Shan said, I can just mention it to Bai Er when I go to court tomorrow. Aren't you busy with vaccinations for the new year? They are already so busy, there is really no need to waste time running back and forth for this matter. The bookstore belongs to Princess Mingda. Since the eldest sister has written back to ask for the book, with her temperament, it is impossible for her not to attract Ruyu, and with Princess Mingda as a person, she would not object to such a thing. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 3382. Princess Mingda did not object, and she was very generous. Bai Shan and Zhou Man only sent a set of books for the official school within the range, but she went to the Ministry of Rights and the National Children's School to ask for the number of female students in the official school, and then sent the middle school girls to the school. List the official schools with less than 5 students, and let the Ministry of Rights inform these official schools that she will donate a batch of books to the past, and the book list will be attached to the past. She pointed out that she wanted to donate to female students. Therefore, local government schools began to increase their efforts to recruit female students. And those official schools that have not recruited female students have also relaxed their conditions and began to recruit female students. If there is no one in the county to apply for the exam, they still have to go everywhere to persuade the girls who are able to enter the school, which is really busy. They also worked very hard to get the books on the list. However, Princess Mingda only communicated with them through the Ministry of Rights, and the book has not yet been printed. It is estimated that it will take a year or two to wait for them to print and send it to the officials. Princess Mingda still found Zhou Man for this, knowing that she was busy, so she went directly to the imperial physician's office to block people. Zhou Man just came back from Huangzhuang village where the vaccine was vaccinated in the suburbs of Beijing, and when he saw her, he stood a little further away and talked to her, although I have washed and changed my whole body, but you haven't had acne, so don't get too close to me. Mingda stood away and spoke to her. The bookstore has already started printing according to the books on the book list. They will print your batch first, but... Just what? It's just that I found that my bookstore is still a little small. It is not only the business of the bookstore and various booksellers, but also printing books for these official schools. The bookstore is simply too busy. Don't the books on the book list all have ready-made editions? One print is enough. But there is a loss in engraving printing too much, Mingda said. I did a careful calculation last night. After printing this way, I'm afraid I have to replace all the plates. This is not the most important thing. The most important thing is, my staff is printing donated books, and the books printed for bookstores and booksellers will not be released in time. Zhou Man understood. Do you want to open a new bookstore? Princess Mingdan nodded her head, her eyes sparkling. I thought about it a long time ago, but I've never made up my mind. This time Jingxing and Ruyu let me make a decision. She said, since our paper mill has been constantly researching new paper, the price of paper has been decreasing year by year, but the price of books has not been much lower. Zhou Man did the math and said, it's still low. A copy of the Analects of Confucius is 2 cents cheaper than before. It doesn't look like much, but for a bookstore with a large output, the gross profit of a book of 2 cents is also a lot. But compared with the price reduction of paper, it is still very high, and the price of ink on the market has also dropped a lot, Mingda said. The emperor mentioned to me privately that it is still difficult for the poor and the common people to study, and one of the reason is that books are expensive. I've always wanted to push the price of books down even further. Zhou Man asked, are the bookstores from the Ministry of Rights and the royal family agree? We can't be the masters of the bookstores over the Ministry of Rights, but the largest and most bookstores in Dajin are in the hands of the royal family. That's what the emperor has to say. Those bookstores were still taken from the hands of the Ministry of Rights by the late emperor in the early years. It is convenient for them to come out and hand over to the royal family, and they don't have to be influenced by the wealthy and aristocratic families in the court. Zhou Man pondered, do you want to send books to various officials and academies first, and then let bookstores and booksellers lower their prices when they all get the books? Yes, through this donation of books, I can also be considered to be in contact with impoverished county offices and government schools in various places, Mingda said. As long as they are willing to sell, the price of the books will definitely be reduced. The price reduction of books in one place will inevitably affect the surrounding area, not to mention so many places together. In the past, Mingda didn't think of this, and there was no suitable reason to donate books, and the county government and government schools would not contact her as a princess, let alone listen to her. But this time, thanks to Bai Ruyu and Bai Jingxing's donations from famous companies, the yamen and official schools in these localities are arrogant and soft-hearted, and it will be much easier to give a small opinion at that time. Not to mention, the price reduction of books is also a good thing for these impoverished counties and government schools. Some people have little control over these places. Zhou Man was stunned when he heard Mingda's grand and lofty goal. Is this your intention, or your Majesty's intention? All, Mingda looked around, seeing that no one was coming and the surroundings were empty, so he lowered his voice and said, you also know that there are some contradictions between the imperial brother and the aristocratic family, although the two sides have been in harmony over the years, on weekdays not too much cooperation, but... Zhou Man realized, I know that some conflicts are not between His Majesty and individual courtiers, but between the royal family and the noble family, the great Jin and the noble family, and the great Jin and the royal family, which cannot be controlled by individuals. She said, it exists objectively and does not depend on human will. It is not your Majesty, it will be another emperor, not to mention a certain clan in the world. Sometimes the situation is not what they want. It's just involuntarily. For the sake of the people behind and the family, they have to adapt to it and move forward. A person who can break his wrist with the same courage as Yang Heshu and put the country and the people above the family. Not much. This time Mingda was surprised. After thinking about her words for a while, she said, you are right, These contradictions exist objectively, so even if the emperor likes Bai Shan and Lord Yang again, he will not give up because of them. Family fights. Zhou Man, Bai Shan hardly considers himself a clan. I know, you have seen it, most of the officials in the court now come from the clans listed in the clan, and very few of the poor and the sects are in the early stage, especially the sects, they sometimes even the small officials in the yamen. We can't compete, Mingda said, the emperor needs helpers, and the future crown prince also needs helpers, so we must do it about the price of books. Zhou Man, so you came to me. I want to hear your opinion. I remember you and Bai Shan mentioned that there seems to be an easier way to print books, but you said that today's ink workers can't do it, so I never asked. Mingda said, I didn't really need it at the time, but now, I want to ask. I've already asked the people from the Ministry of Industry to help find the folk Mahist disciples, and I'll ask them to study it, maybe they'll be able to do it. Zhou Man, oh, it was a mid-autumn festival banquet. She drank too much. When it comes to printing books, she thinks of the printing function in the encyclopedia. It took her so many years to barely understand how it works. But how should I tell Minda? Zhou Man's mind was blank for a moment, and Keek reminded her kindly, host, the content of contemporary printing technology is much higher than yours, and it involves cultural transmission. If you buy such items, the technology tax you have to pay is not enough. Phew. Zhou Man clapped his hands and said, I remember, movable type. Minda, what? Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 3383. Zhou Man turned around and ran, you go home and wait, and I'll find you when I find out. Mingda, she hasn't had time to say that this bookstore is considered to be a family of two, and also, the time for the next office has not yet arrived, does this count as an early departure? Zhou Man ran back to the county master's mansion, got into the study and began to look for it. I remember seeing it in a book, there was a new method of paper making on it, so I bought it. But after reading it, I found that the records in it were very complicated, and it mentioned a printing method called movable type printing. Zhou Man squatted in front of the bookshelf and rummaged through it, talking to Keek while flipping through it. Didn't we deduce that method is not applicable? The sudden sound made Zhou Man sit on the ground with the buttocks. She turned to look, and saw Bai Shan in plain clothes, standing in front of the innermost bookshelf with a book in his hand. Bai Shan helplessly closed the book and stepped forward to help her up. It's rare to see you being frightened. What are you doing at home when you're not in the imperial city at noon? Zhou Man said angrily, don't you know that people are scary and will die? Bai Shan, from childhood to adulthood, and I hid in the dark many times and tried to scare you, but we couldn't scare you once. I thought you weren't afraid of people making noises suddenly. How do I know you were really afraid? Zhou Man looked at him suspiciously, you really don't know, or are you pretending? Bai Shan tried hard to maintain the expression on his face, but Zhou Man stepped on his foot, crushed it, and said with gnashing teeth, I knew it. With a hiss, Bai Shan hurriedly hugged her and said, my fault, forgive me, ma'am, I will never dare again when I am young. Bai Shan finally helped her find the book from the shelf, handed it to her, and asked, how did you come up with this method? Mingda said that he wants to open another bookstore. There are a lot of books on the book list. Mingda sent so many sets, and the bookstore could not run, so he wanted to open another bookstore. Bai Shan frowned, do you want to use a new printing method in the new bookstore? Zhou Man nodded, what do you think? But we have deduced it before, and the new printing method is probably not as good as the current one. Bai Shan said, the movable typesetting is too laborious and the cost is too high. I was thinking about it on the way back, but I think it's a little different, maybe I can give it a try. Bai Shan, what's the difference? Compared with when it was deduced more than 10 years ago, more people are literate now. You don't even say that more and more people take part in the imperial examination every year, but the number of people recruited by the imperial court is still limited every year, so there are a large number of people are unemployed. Bai Shan, do you want them to do the typesetting? Are those scholars who lack this kind of salary? Who can afford to read, who doesn't have a few acres of land? Joe Mandeo, there are always people who lack this amount of wages. Do you count how many people participate in the imperial examination every year? As long as one of so many people enters the bookstore, one a year, the bookstore can do as many things in a few years. Already. When Bai Shan thinks about it, it is true. Today is different from the past, because after the popularity of women's schools, private schools have also flourished, and more people are reading and literate, and not everyone is rushing to the imperial examinations. There are still many people who are literate and unemployed. However, the cost of hiring literate people will still be relatively high. Oh, but books aren't cheap either. Those who can afford it are there. Let's not be too stingy with wages. Since your purpose is to reduce book prices, you must control the cost of each book, including labor costs. Joe Man, this can only be known after the calculation, so you also think this is feasible, right? Bai Shan basically didn't block what Joe Man was going to do. Even if he felt that he couldn't do it, he would let the other party try. Bai Shan nodded and said, "You can give it a try and find me if you need it." Joe Man happily closed the book, turned around and was about to leave. Bai Shan grabbed her and said, "Copy the method on paper and send it, and leave the book at home." Although he put the book on the bookshelf without fear of people reading it, it is still different from sending it to smart people on purpose. Joe Man agreed after thinking about it. Turning to the page where the print was written, he began to transcribe. Mingda has found the disciples of the Mo family. With them here, it should be much faster to figure this out. Then let them think about reducing costs. Woodblock printing does not require people who know too many characters, or even literate people, as long as they print it out one by one. However, movable type is different. The typesetting person must not only know the characters, but also know each character, and even read the textbooks well, so that there will be no mistakes, and the efficiency will be efficient. If the printing volume is not large, the cost of movable typesetting is too high. At this point, movable type is completely inferior to engraving. However, movable type also has a very convenient place. First, as long as there are enough fonts, the bookstore can quickly typeset a new book, and it is not necessary to recharacterize each word like a woodblock, which is very slow. Second, if some characters are damaged during the printing process, the movable type can be replaced quickly, and the cost is low, unlike the engraving. Joe Man said while copying, "Another reason why I recommend movable type is that there are more and more people writing books now, especially the type of essays and essays, as well as the collections of poems and manuscripts published by various literati. The entire Jin dynasty, except for a few people, the rest of the books are placed in the bookstore and hired to copy them. Why is this? Isn't it because the engraving is not easy, and the bookstore will not pick it up if you can't measure it? A new book, like by Erlang, who has already accumulated a reputation, does not matter, the bookstore will carve it out, and republish hundreds of copies every year. If a book written by an author can only sell a few dozen copies in the capital, then it is sold to other places, and there are only a few hundred copies in total. The engraving will be discarded after the bookstore prints it once, and the cost of printing is too high. Few booksellers will pay for this, and unless the author pays for it himself, most of the books are actually copied by someone. It is the tradition of the children of the Zhou family to read and copy books to earn pocket money. After they write well and become proficient in writing, they can copy the manuscripts of poetry collections and these miscellaneous talk books in the bookstore. The price is a little higher than that of copying the Analects of Confucius. Zhou Manjian copied all the content about movable type printing, and then sighed sadly, but I remember one Mid-Autumn festival, the printing technique I mentioned when I was drunk was printed in a few clicks. You explain if Deruo insists on asking this. You said that you saw it in a dream. It seems to be the practice of the gods in the sky. It's a lie to hear that. Bai Shan, but according to you, it doesn't seem fake at all. Don't worry, she will believe you, because this is also true, but it's not the way of the gods in the sky, but the way of the underworld. But the underworld doesn't sound good, but the gods in the sky sound better. Good night. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 3384. Zhou Man handed the copied printing technique to Mingda, and Mingda had no doubts. She handed it over to the craftsmen from the Mo family for pondering. They quickly understood the pros and cons and replied, it's not impossible to burn such a typeface, but it is actually better and cheaper to print old books than engravings. Mingda said, let's put the pros and cons aside. You research it first and master the technology. You don't need to look at the actual situation. At least we can use it when we need it, and we won't be stretched. Zhou Man couldn't help giving her a thumbs up. Awesome, that's right, just like we learn medical skills, not all medical skills can be used, but we also have to learn it, and it takes as long as we are a doctor. I can't wait to encounter such a disease before learning temporarily. Mingda said, first, burn out the commonly used characters. For the first book, let's choose one of Erlang's books. Which book do you think is better? Don't all his books have engravings? Mingda is very partial to Bai Erlang. In recent years, he has written a lot of storybooks, but not many serious articles, but there are a lot of fairies and ghosts in all corners of the world. She doesn't care about people's love if you don't like to watch it, you all want people to engrave it. Among the manuscripts of manuscripts, Bai Erlang's manuscripts have always been fresh and refined printing, which is too conspicuous. Every time it is printed, Bai Shaneng receives a set as a gift, and Zhou Man also receives a set. There are always 2 sets in the study at home, and even Mr. Zhuang's set has a lot of them in their home. Mingda said, it's not good to try the first movable type with someone else's book. What if the print is broken? Zhou Man immediately said, I'm not afraid, I have a medical book, it's not very thick, I'll give it to you to print, and you can sell the printed book in the bookstore. Just a batch. Mingda, it's still from Yin Erlang. After all, it's a medical book. If it's vague, wouldn't it be a mistake? He's not afraid of this. Okay, Zhou Man looked up at the sky and sighed, the first book printed by movable type is enough to go down in history, right? Even if it's just a sentence. Mingda couldn't help but burst out laughing, pulled her and said, are you afraid that you won't be able to leave your name in the history books? I'm just afraid that in the future, the history books won't be able to write you all on one page. That's not necessarily true, Zhou Man said, I have been watching history recently and found that there are very few women in the annals of history, and most of them are relatives of the harem, but after reading it carefully, there are traces of some women in many historical events. Then, from someone started, are women really so insignificant in history? It's not worth mentioning more in history books. Let's not talk about it, let's just talk about Empress Wenda. I heard Bai said that the Hanlin Academy is now compiling the history books of the late emperor, and Empress Wenda occupies such a small amount of space. Zhou Man gestured with both hands and said, the late emperor wrote such a thick history book in his life, but Queen Wenda only accounted for so much. Zhou Man pinched the point of his fingertips to show Mingda, and sighed, but we all know that Empress Wenda can be called the Queen of the Ages. I'm afraid I won't meet an empress who is better than Niang again. Mingda couldn't help looking left and right, then nodded her forehead and whispered, how many queens can you experience? It's fine if you say this in front of me. I don't care at first, I've been talked about a lot, and I'm going to have a grudge in my heart. I know, Didn't I just say it in front of you? Mingda thought thoughtfully, so you printed your medical book. Forget it, Joe Man waved his hand indifferently, you can't spoil the love between your husband and wife, just spoil him. Mingda, then you told me so much, didn't you just convince me to print your first medical book? No, I'm just acting like a spoiled brat at you, and I'm just going to talk about it here, Joe Man said, let them study it, and find me when the font is burnt out. I'll be busy with the Imperial Doctor's office for acne in the past few days. Minda responds. Mingda wants money, and people, and the speed of research is very fast. Of course, the speed of printing books is even faster. In less than a month, they printed the batch of books that Joe Man and Bai Shan wanted, and then the two entrusted Kaun to transport the books to Bai Jingxing, who gave her full control. Bai Jingxing and Yang Zizi had more than 100 kinds of books on their book lists, and many of them were annotated books. Generally, such books were only collected in Quazijian and Fuxiu, and they could not even be bought in bookstores outside. The engraving was distributed to her by the late emperor from the royal bookstore, and it is extremely precious. She picked up a set and gave it to the county school, and pointed out that she wanted to support the female students in the county school. But how can there be female students in the county school? The county school had to hurry up to recruit a few. Anyway, get the book first and then talk about it. These books are not even available in bookstores. Bai Jingxing must watch these recruited female students take root in the county school. Li Han has Yang Zizi, a ready-made scholar who is here, who can guide his homework and understand the local customs. Don't go in a hurry. They stayed in one county school for 3 or 4 months, and then switched to the next county school for another 2 or 3 months. After a year, they didn't go much, but they made a name for themselves in the southwest area, and many scholars came to look for them. They learned from each other. Don't say it, what Confucius said is very reasonable. If you are 3 people, you must have my teacher. Although the scholars who come to them may not be as knowledgeable as them, there must be an aspect that surpasses them. In particular, Bai Jingxing was still young and had many shortcomings, so he learned a lot from communicating with people. Spring rain is as precious as oil, even if it is rainy in the southwest, the rain at this time is also very precious. The carriage walked slowly in the rain. The guards wore scorpions and guarded the carriage on both sides. One guard rode a horse and ran back from the road. He stopped the horse when he reached the first carriage. Lang Jun, the rain is getting heavier and heavier, there is a seat in front the city god temple can rest. Yang Zizi lifted the curtain and looked at the drowsy sky, and asked, how far is it from entering the city? It's about 30 miles away, but the rain is getting bigger and it's getting dark. It's not safe to travel in the rainy night. Yang Zizi nodded, go to the Chenghuang temple in front of you to rest. Yes. A group of people rushed to the temple of the city god, and there were already many people sheltering from the rain, all of whom were on their way. There were so many chariots and horses suddenly coming outside the temple, and they couldn't help but stand at the door to watch the excitement. Dongfang jumped out of the carriage, took down the horse stool, opened the umbrella, and opened the curtain to let Yang Ziyi get out of the carriage. Yang Zizi just got out of the car, and the person standing outside the rain curtain took a deep breath and stared at him with wide eyes. An old man who was sitting still in the temple was also turning his head to look at him. When he saw him, he couldn't help but praise, what a handsome descendant. The middle-aged man sitting across from him heard the words and looked out, stunned for a moment, and then said, it's really handsome, just like his father. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 3385. The old man looked at the middle-aged man, looking at this young man with extraordinary temperament, he must not be an unknown person. Who is his father? Mr. also knows that it is the former Prime Minister Yang Heshu. It's him. The old man continued to turn his head to look, and saw that the young man took the umbrella, went to the car behind to pick up a girl, and couldn't help but wonder, Yang, it's so lively, their clan is not in the southwest. Why do so many people come here and bring their female relatives? That's not a female family member. I heard that Yang Zizi took the students of the Qiazijian to study in the southwest. They should be students of the Qiazijian. Female student, the old man sat up straighter. Although he had heard that women's schools are prevalent in the capital, there are not many women's schools in the southwest. Female students in official schools are even rarer, not to mention the women in the Imperial Academy. Students. The rain was getting heavier. Yang Zizi tilted the umbrella slightly towards Bai Jingxing's head. Bai Ruyu got out of the car and saw that there was such a large distance between the two of them, so she immediately put her head in. Brother Yang, your clothes are all wet. Then he turned his head and said to Bai Jingxing, it's all you. If you hadn't given away the umbrellas on the way, we wouldn't have squeezed every single one of them. Yang Zizi was pushed away a little bit, and when he saw Bai Jingxing being blown by the rain, he smiled helplessly, simply put the umbrella into Bai Ruyu's hand, covered his head with his sleeve, turned around and ran to the temple. Come in, don't get wet. Wet. Bai Ruyu hurriedly moved the umbrella to Bai Jingxing's side, and the two went to the temple while arguing, you stay in the car first, and when big brother Yang takes me to the temple to pick you up, you won't be drenched, but you have to rush together. Yang Zizi rushed into the temple, shook the rain on his sleeves, and instructed the guards, come in with some luggage, let them change out of wet clothes in a while, and let them find some firewood to make a fire, boil the ginger soup, the spring is cold, I want to eat ginger tea to ward off the cold when it rains, and everyone uses a bowl. The guard responded in a low voice and turned around to arrange. Bai Ruyu and Bai Jingxing also came in with umbrellas, and the three Lihan behind only had one umbrella, but they were not in a hurry. Lihan sent Tao Yang in first, then turned around and took the umbrella in Bai Ruyu's hand to pick up Wang Yi. There was no rain on the three of them. Bai Jingxing blamed Bai Ruyu when he saw it, it's all your fault, the three of us got wet in the rain. Blame me? Before I got out of the car, big brother Yang got caught in the rain just to hold an umbrella for you. Okay, Bai Ruyu complained, if you want to blame it, you should be blamed. Jingxing, Yang Zizi called back to her, let's find a place to sleep at night, and you will show everyone your body later, so don't catch the cold at this time. The two stopped quarreling. Bai Jingxing responded and walked around the temple with Yang Zizi. The temple of the city god is not big, but it is not very small. The main hall is still very spacious. At this time, there are 6 fires inside. There are 2 people together, and there are 4 or 5 people together. There are men and women. Bai Jingxing followed behind Yang Zizi and walked in, and saw a large open space beside the statue. Unfortunately, there was rain leaking there, and the rain was falling tick by tick, so that place was left behind. Bai Jingxing stopped, Yang Zizi also stopped, looked at it and said, fortunately, the raindrops are not very big, someone will take a wooden bucket to catch this drop of water, and we will make a fire on the side. How? There are so many of them, and other places are divided into small pieces, so they cannot be accommodated. Bai Jingxing nodded in response, but he could not help walking behind the statue, and seeing a small door there, he was pleasantly surprised. Brother Yang, there is still room behind. Yang Zizi came over, and the small door happened to open, and the 2 little ladies came out of the door with umbrellas, followed by a guard, and they were startled when they touched them. Bai Jingxing took a step back and bumped into Yang Zizi's chest. Yang Zizi stretched out his hand to support her shoulder, looked up, and the 2 little ladies who came in were stunned. Seeing that they didn't notice her cowardly movements, Bai Jingxing immediately stood up straight, quietly relieved, smiled at them and asked, "This young lady, I don't know what this backyard is, but is there a place to stop and rest?" The two little ladies came back to their senses, and the face in the front was slightly red. The houses in the back are all damaged, and they are not as good as the main hall. Most of them leaked rain, so they can't rest. Bai Jingxing felt a little pity after hearing this. Yang Zizi calmly withdrew his hand, took a step to the side, and then said, "Would you like to go take a look?" Bai Jingxing rolled his eyes, nodded immediately, and turned around to greet Bai Ruyu. "Dabao, are you leaving?" Bai Ruyu was not happy that she called him by his nickname in public, so she replied hurriedly, "No." Bai Jingxing dragged Yang Zizi to the backyard together. Although the house in the backyard is dilapidated and there are some leaks on the corridor, it can still pass people, and you can walk around the backyard along the corridor. There are 4 rooms in the backyard, which are not big. The doors of each room are open, which should be pushed open by people who came to shelter from the rain. The room was empty, with only some missing arms and legs, tables and chairs scattered on the ground, and unburned firewood. When Bai Jingxing saw it, he immediately rolled up his sleeves and went to pick it up. He also greeted Yang Zizi, come on, we can make a fire at night." Yang Shang picked up the unburned firewood, glanced at it and said, "It should have been burned a long time ago. The house here is badly damaged, leaking rain and air, and it is indeed not comparable to the front hall." Bai Jingxing also picked up the table and chairs that lacked arms and legs, which can also be burned. When she picked it up, she found that there were too many. She couldn't hold it, so she simply threw it on the ground, grabbed 2/3 of the broken table and built it up, dragged the remaining table legs and walked out. Yang Zizi looked amused and helped her to lift the other corner of the table, and then knocked down the pile of firewood without bumping. "Let the guards come and get it later. They still have things to do. Since we are here, we can just drag them back after leaving the door." Bai Jingxing looked around and asked curiously, "Strange, there is nothing in this backyard, those 2 little ladies. Why are you here?" Yang Zizi reached out and pointed to her right side. Bai Jingxing turned his head to look and suddenly realized, "Ah, it's a thatched hut." Yang Zizi asked, "Do you want to change clothes?" Bai Jingxing hesitated. When Yang Zizi saw it, he said, "Let's go, let's send the firewood back first to let them make a fire, and let the lamb come with you later with the clothes. You change your wet clothes on the way, don't catch a cold." Bai Jingxing said "Oh" and followed Yang Zizi back to the main hall obediently. Bai Ruyu and the others were not idle for a while, but were rummaging for firewood in the hall and trying to make a fire. Seeing that the 2 brought back so much firewood, I was pleasantly surprised. "Is there any more? I'll go get some too." Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 3386. Yang Zizi put down the firewood, clapped his hands and said, "These are enough, leave the rest for future people." He turned his head to Bai Jingxing and said softly, "Go ahead." Bai Jingxing carried the skirt and ran to find the lamb, and quietly went behind with her carrying a burden. Bai Ruyu didn't pay attention at first, but when she was about to drink ginger tea, she realized that the only 2 ladies in the team were not there, so she looked around. Seeing Yang Zizi leaning against the small door in the backyard, he could not help but run up and ask, "Brother Yang, where is Jingxing?" Yang Zizi pointed to the backyard and said, "She has gone to change her clothes. You also go and let Dai find the clothes. Go to the backyard to change clothes later." "What kind of backyard are you going to?" "Just put a curtain on it and change it here in a while, but change your clothes." Bai Ruyu rubbed her stomach, "I'll go in a while." Yang Zizi smiled and said, "There are girls in the temple, even if the curtains are drawn, it will be inconvenient. You can go to the backyard." "Okay." Bai Ruyu leaned on the other side of the door and secretly glanced at Yang Zizi. When Yang Zizi found out, he put away the things he was cutting, raised his head and asked, "What's wrong?" Bairuyu looked at the backyard, and then looked at the person who looked like that, and then she leaned over and asked in a low voice, "Big brother Yang, are you, no, is it because you are so good to Jingxing because she once saved your life?" Yang Zizi raised his eyebrows and asked calmly, "Why do you ask? Am I being bad to you?" "All right, but, it's not the same," Bairuyu scratched her head and said, "You treat her better." Bairuyu hummed softly before saying, "For example, when we had our birthday some time ago, you gave her a birthday present. I only remembered my birthday present when I mentioned it, and asked Dongfang to prepare it for me temporarily." Yang Zizi was a little embarrassed. "This is indeed my negligence, I apologize to you." No, we are young, and we didn't celebrate our birthdays very much when we were in the capital. Every birthday, we just have a meal with our family, and the birthday gifts we receive are also from close relatives. Brother Yang doesn't remember the love. Excusable, Bairuyu looked at him slightly, "But why do you remember Bai Jingxing?" Yang Zizi said, "Because she saved my life." "Really, fake?" Bairuyu looked suspicious. He always felt that Yang Zizi had been kind to Bai Jingxing over the past year. Even if it is a life-saving grace, with his character, he will probably only remember it, and if he has the opportunity to repay in the future, he will not remember it every day of the year, and treat Bai Jingxing every day, right? Yang Zizi nodded seriously, "Really? Okay," Bairuyu temporarily suppressed her doubts, "then you have to remember in the future, I and Bai Jingxing have the same birthday." Yang Zizi nodded with a smile, "I shouldn't forget it again in this life." In fact, he remembered it from the beginning. After all, their cousins and sisters were also famous in the capital with their 2 birthdays on the same day, but he hurriedly forgot when he was preparing gifts for Bai Jingxing. Bairuyu finally stopped searching for the root cause, and Yang Zizi breathed a sigh of relief. He lowered his head and took out the wood carving. Just as he was about to continue carving, when he noticed that someone was looking at him, he turned to look at him, and saw 2 little ladies who had come out of the backyard peeking at him. Yang Zizi lowered his eyes, turned around, and turned his back to them directly. Bairuyu was bored, so she squatted by the small door and said to Yang Zizi, "Further north is Xining County. When can we get to Pengshui County?" Yang Zizi lowered his head to carve what was in his hand and chatted with him, "Who said we were going to Pengshui County?" "Bairuyu, but Pengshui County is Guo County, Jianzhou. If we don't go to Pengshui County, why don't we take a look at Jianzhou Prefectural School?" Yang Zizi said, "Jianzhou is more remote than the previous 2 states, and the road is more difficult to walk. There are many Yi people here, and the customs are very different from those in the Central Plains, so I am not sure whether I can go to the official school to study in Jianzhou. Maybe we'll go to some tribes to learn, and then a year will pass." Bairuyu was stunned. "There is still a school in the tribe? Why not? Some tribes still have their own writing, which is very interesting," Yang Zizi said. "In addition to writing, there are different cultures such as Wuzhu and Wu doctors, and we can learn from them." Bairuyu's eyes brightened. "It's very interesting to hear. Although it's interesting, you can't run around. Be careful to be photographed by Huazi. There are many mountains and dense forests here, and we won't be able to find you when that time comes." "How old am I when you take pictures of Hanako?" Bairuyu stretched out her arm to show him. "I'm already 16 years old, and I'm in the house of someone who got married early, and I'm already a father. Who would take pictures of a young man?" Yang Zizi smiled at him. "That's not necessarily true. I heard that some tribes here respect women, and they do walk through marriages. Maybe a woman from a tribe has a crush on you and will take you as a child for a while." "Husband?" Bairuyu shuddered, looked up to see Yang Zizi's face, and then calmed down. "It's all right, if Big Brother Yang is with you, if they want to rob you, they will rob you." "Yang Zizi." Bairuyu was beaten on the head from the back. He covered his head and turned around, and saw Bai Jingxing staring at him. Big brother Yang is going to be robbed, you don't want to protect him, you're still gloating at the misfortune. Bairu, I'm really wronged. This injustice is comparable to Douyi's injustice. Can't you just listen to one sentence without connecting the context? Yang Zizi put away the small knife and wood carving in his hand, and said with a smile, it may not necessarily rob me. The aesthetics vary from place to place, and they may prefer Ruyu. Bai Jingxing became curious, Big brother Yang, do you know which tribe is respected by women? Otherwise, let's go and see the excitement. Yang Zizi's face stiffened, he shook his head and said, I don't know, let's go with the fate, I don't think it's necessary to meet them on purpose. That's right. Bai Jingxing turned to let him go out, waved at Bairu, go and change your clothes, I'll check everyone's body, and I'll make some cold dispelling soup for you to drink. The fire had already been lit, and Li Han and the others were already sitting by the fire, and when they saw them coming over, they waved, come here and see what we have for dinner. Bai Jingxing sat down and motioned Qian Xiaoyang to bring her medicine box over. What else can I eat? Soak the cake in boiling water, come on, I'll feel your pulse first. The three of Li Han pretended not to hear. Bai Jingxing urged, hurry up. Yang Zizi rolled up his sleeves and sat opposite her, reaching out to give her a pulse. The three of Li Han quietly looked over and saw that Bai Jingxing had let him go, but they still did not move. Yang Zizi urged them, come on, we have to eat scones after watching. The three of Li Han dawdled and discussed with Bai Jingxing, it's okay to check the pulse, and it's okay to take medicine, but can we not get the needle? Good night. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 3387. It is said that Master Zhou's surgery and acupuncture are unmatched in the whole of Dajin, especially acupuncture, which is well known in the whole Dajin. The acupuncture of the Imperial Physician's Office was even picked up by Master Zhou, and as a result Bai Jingxing's acupuncture. Thinking of the few needles that Bai Jingxing had taken when they accidentally fell ill before, it was like tears. Bai Jingxing glanced at Yang Zizi and was a little embarrassed, the cold wind is blowing, no need for needles, I will prescribe some medicine for you to keep out the cold. She grabbed the medicine from the medicine box, poured the water into the kettle after boiling the water, and refilled the water to boil the medicine. Yang Zizi also went to the backyard to change into clean clothes, and went out with Bairu. Bai Jingxing handed them 2 cakes, soak in water to eat. Bairu sat on the other side of her and let out a long sigh, it's really cold today. As soon as he raised his head, he met the gaze of the little lady who was sitting by the fire behind Bai Jingxing. He followed her gaze to look at Yang Zizi, he immediately laughed and winked at Yang Zizi, brother Yang, then another little lady is staring at you. Hearing this, Bai Jingxing looked back curiously, met the girl's gaze, couldn't help smiling, and nodded at the other party. There were many people staring at Yang Zizi along the way, not only Yang Zizi was used to it, but also those who accompanied him. Yang Zizi didn't look back, looked at the cake in Bairuyu's hand, and asked, is it too much to finish? Bairu immediately lowered her head and took a bite. Although it was dry and scum, she still had to eat it. This was their dry food. I miss the dry food made by Aunt Jian. Bai Jingxing was talking about it so that the cakes in his hands were no longer fragrant. On the other side of the fire, the middle-aged man frowned slightly, rhyme. Wang Yun returned to her senses, blushing slightly and bowing her head, but she still couldn't hold back, uncle, this person looks good, they don't look like ordinary people. The middle-aged man said displeasedly, don't be rude. Wang Yun could only bow her head, daring not to discuss any further. Their medicine had just been boiled, it was already dark outside, and the rain cracked on the roof and window lattice, making a loud noise, and the whole group was very fortunate. Fortunately we didn't rush this time, otherwise we would definitely be caught. Rain blocked the road. Yang Zizi took out a cloak and put it over Bai Jingxing, and said softly, you are tired too, Go to sleep first. Brother Yang, aren't you going to sleep? I'm not in a hurry, I'll stay for a while. Although there are guards, they have to take turns to stare to be relieved. Bai Jingxing nodded and lay down on his arm. But her eyes were still open, and she was still bright, looking very energetic. Yang Zizi added 2 sticks of firewood, and occasionally lowered his head to meet her eyes. After a while, he laughed and said, "Forget it, don't force yourself if you can't sleep." Bai Jingxing smiled, no longer pretending to be asleep, raised his head to look at him. "Brother Yang, are you tired of taking us all the way?" She snapped her fingers and said, "Not only do we have to make an itinerary, but we also have to come forward to communicate with the official school, and we have to give us lectures, assign our homework, correct our homework, and finally take care of our daily life." Yang Zizi poked the fire with a stick and replied softly, "I also gained a lot from it, and you all take good care of me, and it's not me who paid alone, so I'm not tired. We should return to the capital next year, right?" Yang Zizi nodded and asked, "Do you want to go home?" Bai Jingxing nodded, "I'm homesick, I don't know if the eldest brother and the second brother have grown, and if the parents are still so busy." Yang Zizi frowned and thought for a moment, "Then let's go home." Bai Jingxing shook his head again and again, "Since I'm out for a study tour, I naturally have to finish where I should go. Although I miss home, I'm not in a hurry to go home." She paused and said, "It's you, big brother Yang, is it really good for you not to go back to take the exam? What's wrong? Everyone in the world wants to become famous at a young age, and the same goes for careers. Naturally, the sooner you start your career, the better, and the more you take advantage of it. You were admitted to the Jinchi examination when you were obviously weak, but you never went to the Ministry of Personnel to select officials, and you will be delayed." Seeing her pause, Yang Zizi asked with a smile, "Are you getting old?" He, Bai Jingxing scratched his head and said, "Of course, you are still young compared to other officials who have entered the official position, but you can obviously enter the official position earlier." Yang Zizi stared at the fire with his eyes down, and said after a while, "Now that the Jin dynasty is prosperous and talented people are coming out in large numbers, there is no shortage of me. If it is not necessary for me, why do I have to be an official?" Bai Jingxing was stunned and asked dumbly, "What are you doing if you don't work?" "Of course I do what I want to do, just do whatever I want." "Bai Jingxing, what does big brother Yang want to do?" Yang Zizi tilted his head to look at her and smiled. Bai Jingxing's eyes were full of doubts, and he also tilted his head. Yang Zizi stretched out his hand to pull up the loose cloak on her body, and said softly, "I want to travel every inch of the world, to many places I have never been to, or even heard of, and write a travel journal in the future, tell the world where I have been and what insights I have gained, and this is considered to have left something useful to the world." "What about you?" Yang Zizi asked her. "I remember that you used to aspire to be like your mother and to practice medicine everywhere. Have you changed it now?" "It hasn't changed. Am I not preparing now? My medical skills have improved a lot this year." Bai Jingxing still felt unbelievable. You are the son of the Yang clan, are you really out of office?" "Not all the sons of the noble family will go into office. Isn't the patriarch of the Wang clan always in the wild?" Of course, in his early years, he also followed the emperor, went to the battlefield, and became a small official. After resigning, he returned to inherit the family business, to concentrate on handling the family affairs of the Wang family. Yang Zizi was very envious of the living conditions of the patriarch Wang. Seeing the curiosity on Bai Jingxing's face, he leaned closer and said in a low voice, "Look, is the patriarch Wang the most in the family now? Longevity." Bai Jingxing's eyes widened instantly. "It seems to be true." Yang Zizi chuckled and said, "Politics makes people grow old. It's not necessary for the people of the world. There's really no need to force yourself in." Bai Jingxin clenched his fists, and for some reason, he was very excited. You are right, you are absolutely right. Then big brother Yang, will you go to sea in the future? Yang Zizi, think of it. Let's go out then. Bai Jingxin raised his voice in excitement. Bai Ruyu, who had already fallen asleep, was startled by her voice, and she immediately covered her mouth and approached him and whispered, "Take it when the time comes." "I will." Yang Zizi's eyes brightened, staring at her and asking, "Do you want to go to sea too?" Bai Jingxin nodded fiercely and whispered, "Think. I heard that there were caravans from the sea to Maluo and other places, where the customs are completely different from ours." Yang Zizi stared into her eyes and nodded seriously, "Okay, I will definitely take you there." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 3388. In the city god temple, apart from the sound of the fire burning, there was only the sound of people turning from time to time, but at this time Bai Jingxin felt that the surroundings were very quiet, so quiet that she could only see Yang Zizi's face reflecting the fire. The world is right. Big brother Yang is really good looking. His eyebrows are like sharp swords, his eyes are like stars, his nose is high, and there is a chuckle at the corner of his mouth. When he looks at you with a pair of eyes, it seems that he is the only one inside. Bai Jingxin stared into his eyes and lost his mind for a while. Seeing that her cheeks were slightly red, Yang Zizi couldn't help but raise his eyebrows slightly. It's been a year, and this silly girl is not open at all. What's going on tonight? Yang Zizi couldn't help but raise the corners of his mouth slightly, his smile deepened, he looked into her eyes, and was about to find a topic to continue, when he saw his reflection in her eyes. He was stunned for a moment, and for a while, he couldn't help but reach out and pull the strands of hair that fell from her forehead behind her ear. The two regained their senses in an instant, and both looked away uncomfortably. Yang Zizi swallowed and said, "It is said that Wu Yuan's eyes are very round, and I think yours are also very round." Before he finished speaking, Yang Zizi felt that this was not good, to Meng Lang, and hurriedly said, "I mean, your eyes are very beautiful, I don't know if you look like Uncle Bai Shi or Aunt Zhou." Bai Jingxin blushed and looked down at his toes and said, "Like my mother, but my grandfather said that our eyes are all like my grandfather's. In my family, my mother and fourth uncle's eyes are the most like my grandfather's." "Oh, it's pretty. Bai Jingxin, yours is also very beautiful." After saying that, I felt a little annoyed. Why did I exchange politeness on this kind of thing? Yang Zizi couldn't help twitching his lips, got up and walked to the side, spread the cloak on his body on the straw, and said softly, "It's late at night, go to sleep, if the rain stops tomorrow, we'll leave." Bai Jingxin hesitated for a while and then asked, "How about you?" "I'm not sleepy, you go to bed first, I'll watch the fire for a while." Bai Jingxin lay down and Yang Zizi sat beside her, just blocking the eyes of others and surrounding her between a wall. Dongfang looked at it with a smile, then quietly got up and went to open their suitcase, and took out a coat for him. "Lang Jun, you brought 2 cloaks, you can wear your coat for a while now." Yang Zizi responded. In the city god temple, although most of the people slept, there were always people who hadn't slept. For example, the pile of people at the back of them were not ordinary people, so they didn't sleep. Naturally, he could see clearly the relationship between Yang Zizi and Bai Jingxin. Although he couldn't hear what they were saying, he could see that they had a close relationship by looking at their intimate gestures. Wang Yun lowered her head in disappointment, holding the handkerchief for a long time, unable to fall asleep. It took a while for Bai Jingxin to fall asleep. She could feel Yang Zizi sitting behind her, with the fire at her feet. She turned her body sideways to face the wall and did not dare to turn over for a long time. but it is very difficult for people to wake up when they fall asleep. Bai Jingxin was like this. When she woke up, it was Bai Ruyu who pushed her to wake up. Bai Jingxin got out of the cloak, and the whole person was still a little dazed. Bai Ruyu looked at her with disgust and said, "You can sleep too well, you can fall asleep with the noise in the temple." The people in the temple of the city god woke up long ago, everyone was cooking water for breakfast, and she was the last to wake up. Bai Jingxin stroked his messy hair, and as soon as he raised his head, he met Yang Zizi's smiling eyes. She was so embarrassed that her toes were curled up. After smoothing her hair, she smiled embarrassedly at him, lowered her head and covered her face with her hands. "Where's the lamb?" Qian Xiaoyang mixed warm water with a basin and gave her. "Miss, let's wash up." Bai Jingxin exhaled and hurriedly took the veil. Li Han on the side couldn't help but smile and said, "Strange, Bai Swame, we didn't have a lot of wild places before. We've seen everyone rolling down the hillside covered in mud. I didn't see you shy back then, why are you shy now?" Bai Jingxin forced himself to calm down. "How can I be shy? I'm just sorry for getting up late and making you wait for a long time." "Don't be embarrassed," Tao Liang said with a sad sigh. "Anyway, we won't be able to leave if you wake up." "Yes," Yang Zizi smiled and said, "if you are still sleepy, you can sleep for a while after eating breakfast." Only then did Bai Jingxin realize that the rain was still falling outside. She was surprised. "Isn't it spring rain? Why has it been raining for so long?" Yang Zizi also looked outside worriedly and said, "There is so much rain and the roads are muddy. I'm afraid it's not easy to walk, and I'm even more afraid that the mountains won't be able to hold water, and it will be bad if a flash flood breaks out." Yang Zizi can be said to be ironclad, and it took less than an hour after he finished speaking. The guards who went to explore the road quickly returned in the rain to report, "The road ahead is blocked by muddy water and stones rolling down from the mountain." The people in the Chenghuang temple panicked. "What, a mudslide? How can we do this? Can't we leave? Why don't you turn around and go home?" The guard glanced at the ordinary people, stepped forward and whispered to Yang Zizi, "The way we came was also blocked by muddy water." Yang Zizi frowned. "What about here? The terrain here is high," the little one has looked carefully, "and it's fine for the time being. How far is the mudslide from us?" "The way to go is 8 miles ahead, and the way to come is 5 miles behind. Not far, which means there may be danger here as well." Yang Zizi couldn't help but look at the people in the Chenghuang temple, and quickly identified a few local people from it. He stepped forward and asked, "Is there any other way to get to the county town? This road is the best way to go. Even this avenue is blocked by mud and water, and other roads can't be walked." "It's not necessarily, the back road can be walked, but..." The other party glanced at their carriage. "That road can't be crossed at all, but the horse can barely pass." Yang Zizi smiled and said, "That is to say, you can pass." "Yes, yes," they also hesitated, "but it's still raining outside, and the mountain road is difficult after the rain." Yang Zizi also looked outside. "Wait a little longer and see the situation." The people in the temple of the city god could only wait honestly. Bai Jingxin held a cup of hot tea and sighed, "It's raining and staying guests, the ancients really did not make a mistake." "What kind of summary is this?" Bai Ruyu held her face and stared at the drizzle outside, habitually bickering with her. "Everyone knows that you can't walk on rainy days." Yang Zizi turned his head and glanced at him, and said, "I think everyone is very bored, so why don't you take a book and read it? It just so happens that I have already corrected the assignments you handed in last time. Let's talk about it." The three of Li Han were excited and nodded again and again. "Okay, okay." Bai Ruyu quietly lowered her head and hugged her hands, hoping that Yang Zizi wouldn't see him. Yang Zizi patted him on the head. "Ruyu, bring your schoolwork, let's see how you are." Bai Jingxin snickered and looked at him with schadenfreude. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 3389. Several of Lihan held back their smiles. When they were quiet, a chuckle came from not far away, and everyone couldn't help but turn their heads to look. Wang Yun looked at them with a blushing face. Seeing them, she bowed to them and asked with a smile, "How many of you are scholars?" Bai Jingxing is a girl, so he answered on his behalf, nodded with a smile, "Yes, we are students who came out to study abroad." In fact, she is also very interested in their group. The people in this temple, the merchants and ordinary people, can be seen at a glance. Only their group includes donkeys and ox carts, as well as tall horses and carriages. The three of them, a middle-aged man and a girl, were dressed in silk satin, and the other, a more respected old man, was dressed in coarse cloth. It's just that they met by chance, so they shouldn't interrupt, otherwise she would have asked. Now that she has taken the initiative to speak, Bai Jingxing is also very happy to talk to her. "We are going to Xining County, how about you?" Seeing her kindness, Wang Yun quietly breathed a sigh of relief, squeezed out a smile and said, "We are visiting relatives, and we are also going to Xining County." The two naturally walked together. Bai Jingxing took the initiative to introduce himself. "My surname is Bai, I am the first in the family. How about you, little lady?" "My surname is Wang, and I live in the house for 3. Wang Yun quietly glanced in Yang Zizi's direction. "If Aunt Bai doesn't mind, I'll call you sister." Bai Jingxing said generously, "I am 16 this year and just passed my birthday." "Then I'm older than you," Wang Yun smiled. "I'm 17 this year, and it's Dongyu's birthday." "Did you come out with your brother to study abroad?" Wang Yun asked curiously. "Women's study tour, a little strange." Bai Jingxing pointed at Bai Ruyu with a smile and said, "That is my cousin, and I'm not wrong. I did come out to study with my brother. Studying is mainly for studying and gaining knowledge. I don't think this is necessary." "Men and women?" After Bai Jingxing answered, he immediately asked, "Is that old man also from your family? I think people in your family respect him very much." "That's Mr. Wei. My uncle said that he is a very wise man and should be treated with courtesy." "Ah, so that's your uncle. I thought it was your father," Bai Jingxing asked curiously. "A donkey and an ox cart outside." Wang Yun said embarrassedly, "It belongs to Mr. Wei and his servants. He said that he doesn't like horses, it's too fast, and he likes to ride donkeys. That's why we walk slowly all the way. It was a 2-day journey. It's been 5 days." However, Bai Jingxing was very moved when he saw the donkey in the broken horse shed. "I have ridden a horse and an ox, but I have never ridden a donkey." Wang Yun. Sitting not far away, the same smart old man. It took Wang Yun a long time to find her voice. Have you ever ridden a cow?" "Yeah, I often ride. Every year I go to the village to plant rice and harvest wheat and rice. My uncle and the others like to put me on the back of the cow and drag me along," Bai Jingxing said pertinently. "Riding a cow is more comfortable than riding a horse." "Wang Yun, are you still going to work in the fields?" Bai Jingxing said, "When the farming is busy, there is field leave in school. My parents are busy, and sometimes they can't take care of us even when they are on field leave, so they send us back to our grandfather's home, and my uncle and the others will take us to the field." The two of them were chatting lively when a cry came from a corner of the temple. The two of them couldn't help but stop talking and turn to look. Before they could see who was crying, a figure rushed towards Bai Jingxing quickly. Standing not far away, Yang Zizi's expression changed. He quickly stepped forward, pulled Bai Jingxing behind him, and the figure who rushed up knelt in front of the position where Bai Jingxing was standing just now with a thud. Yang Zizi held back his legs, staggered slightly, and held Bai Jingxing tightly in his hands. Bai Jingxing was not frightened by the people who rushed over, but was taken aback by Yang Zizi's drag. "Big brother Yang." Yang Zizi looked back at her. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine, Bai Jingxing stuck his head out from behind him and looked at the kneeling young woman. It seems that she is the one who has something to do. Yang Zizi also looked at the man. Wang Yun was also very frightened, her hands were shaking a little. The middle-aged man just caught up, pulled her back 2 steps, frowned and looked at the kneeling young woman. Who are you and what do you want to do? The young woman ignored him, but looked at Yang Zizi and Bai Jingxing behind him, and kowtowed, "Miss, please help me." She pointed to the family of 3 in the corner and said, "Miss, my daughter is ill. Yesterday, I saw my wife taking the pulse and taking medicine for a few young masters. It seems to be a doctor. I beg your wife to save my daughter. It's still raining outside, so we really rushed not to the county seat." Bai Jingxing hurriedly stood up from behind Yang Zizi. "Sick? What's wrong?" She was busy looking at it, but Yang Zizi was still grabbing her wrist. She took 2 steps and was pulled before she realized it, so she couldn't help but look back at him. Yang Ziyi stepped forward, still holding her wrist tightly. "Let's go over and have a look. This is a family of 4, a pair of in-laws with their daughter-in-law and granddaughter. It is said that they are going to the city to defect to their son. Because of the rain, I only took shelter from the rain in the temple of the city god yesterday." Bai Jingxing reached out and touched the child's forehead and asked, "What's her name?" "It's called Dayat." Bai Jingxing paused and then called her, "Dayat, how old are you this year?" The young woman hurriedly replied, "It's 5 years old." Bai Jingxing nodded slightly and smiled with her. "Let the child answer, I want to hear her talk." She beckoned in front of her, then took her hand to feel the pulse, looked into her eyes and asked, "Daya, can you hear my sister?" Daya nodded and replied in a low voice, "I heard it." Bai Jingxing breathed a sigh of relief. Just looking at her dumbfounded look, he thought she was burnt out. It was too hot. "Where do you feel uncomfortable? Do you have a headache? Do you have a sore throat?" Some questions were answered by her, and some were answered by her mother. Bai Jingxing quickly diagnosed it and said, "It's a cold. The surrounding people spread out a little, and the wind and cold will infect people." Bai Jingxing touched the clothes on the child and frowned slightly. "The clothes on her body are a little damp. Do you have any clean clothes? Put them on by the fire and let her cool down first." "There are clothes." The young woman hurriedly dug out a set of clothes, all of which were a little thin. Yang Zizi glanced at it and asked Dongfang to bring the cloak that was put away this morning to wrap the child. At this time, he needed to be warm, but he could no longer suffer from the cold. "Take a wet handkerchief with warm water to cool her down, and I'll give her a needle in a while." Bai Jingxing got up. "I'll get her a set of medicine and boil it first." As soon as Bai Ruyu heard that she was going to pierce someone, she hurriedly followed behind her and whispered, "Are you really piercing her? Can you do it? It's fine if you pierce us at ordinary times." "A little girl, only 5 years old." Bai Jingxing took a deep breath and said, "Don't worry, the needles for reducing fever. I have been pierced by my mother before, and I have seen my mother pierce you, and my mother and I have also pierced in the Ji Shitang. There is definitely no problem." "But have you ever pierced such a small child?" "No." Bai Ruyu persuaded, "Otherwise, it's better to just use medicine and put aside the acupuncture for now. You don't know, your needles can hurt. It's not like Aunt Tang. She has needles, and sometimes we don't feel it. Good night."